What's happening, everyone? My name is Jake. I make lifestyle videos and vlogs, and I just started a new series titled Real Chats with Jake, where I sit down with my friends and my colleagues and we talk about conversations that are sometimes hard to talk about. Today, we are talking about microaggression and mitigation within the blackout racism movement that we are talking about still. Today, I'm talking with Jaé Jackson. She is a colleague of mine. I love her dearly, and she has been a very big advocate in the Black Lives Matter movement. So, if you want to keep up with these conversations, please hit the subscribe button and the like button on this video. It really means a lot to me. Also, if you have questions that you want to see in future interviews, please list them in the comments below. All right, let's get into the video. Welcome, everyone. My name is Jake. I am doing my second interview of the series Real Chats with Jake. Today we are talking about racism and microaggression and mitigation, and I'm joined with the lovely Jaé Jackson here. I know Jay from work. We learned the same show together about 2 years ago, and she is just an amazing singer, actress, performer. She is a beautiful mother of two gorgeous boys that I love dearly, and she is a very big advocate right now for the Black Lives Matter movement, and just kind of making her voice heard. So I would love to get a conversation started with you. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to sit down with me and have this conversation. So welcome.
Thank you, Jake. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to
Of
dive
course.
right in.
Of course. Yeah. I think for those of you who didn't watch the last episode, the main goal with this video in this series is to talk about things that kind of are uncomfortable to talk about, especially between the white community and the black community right now. I know there are a lot of people that want to say something or feel like they need to say something, but they don't know how to word it because they're worried about offending someone. And these conversations aren't easy to have. I mean, the past week and a half, I've learned a lot of things that I was doing unintentionally that, it hurt. It hurts to hear, like, I have been doing this my entire life. I've learned to talk to people this way or use this phrase or do this action just from the way that I was raised, and it is painful to have those conversations, but I think they're necessary, and I think a lot of people need to hear what is going on right now so that we can improve upon this. So yeah.
Sure.
So are you ready to start this?
Yes.
All right. So the first thing I want to ask you, Jay, is what does racism mean to you? If you could define it in your own words.
If I could define it in my own words, I would first take a step back and kind of define all of the underlying things that are in the very definition of racism. So you've got prejudice, you've got discrimination, and a lot of people don't even know what that means, but it's in the definition of racism.
Right.
So we're going to take a step back and go there first. So discrimination is the unjust treatment of different categories of people. So discrimination is it's a noun, but it's an action. You're deciding, you're making a conscious effort to decide that I'm going to treat you differently because of race in this case, or your sex, or your religion. So we're going to start there, and then we're going to go to prejudice. Prejudice is the irrational opinion that is based on no actual experience. It's just irrational. You just come up with this idea that you do not want to like a specific person for whatever specific reason. So racism to me is discrimination and prejudice, but you're doing it to a specific race. So that's what that means to me. It's the oppression that you've decided through your prejudice that you will want to discriminate against me based on my race.
Right. What I learned last week with Brandon was he was saying it's a conscious choice, like you just said, and sometimes when it is a conscious choice, it is it becomes an unconscious choice because that's become a behavioral trait. So opening a door for someone is a conscious choice of being polite, but we've learned that. So now when I open a door for you, it's out of because I've learned that that's the polite thing to do. But it's the same thing with racism. Like when you are taught to dislike someone because of their color of their skin or their sex or their sexual orientation or whatever it may be, you are consciously making that decision to treat someone differently. So I agree with you completely, and that's something that I'm realizing now too. Is a lot of people are like, well, I'm not racist, but your actions, whether they are your fault or you're not, or not your fault through the way that you were raised, you are still making that decision whether it's conscious or not.
Correct.
So yeah, I it's such a great, like, I'm so happy that you said that because that's something that I didn't realize. You know,
Right.
we think racism is just, oh well, I don't hate black people or I don't hate Asians, but it's
Right.
so much deeper than that. And I think you're
Yes.
so right about the prejudiceness and discrimination coming together, and that's what forms racism. You
Correct.
know?
Correct.
Yeah.
I do believe that racism is taught in a way, but in the way that I've experienced racism from a child, I don't believe that children, the way I experienced it, I do not believe that children were being taught it so early. So it is
Right.
also a conscious bias, but it's an unconscious bias of being afraid of something that is different from you.
Mm-hmm.
Like me and my nephew goes to daycare, and the teachers aren't trying to be racist, but they're afraid of him because he's different. He's the only one in his class, and because he's different and is the little black boy, they treat him differently, and they don't want to discipline him. They don't want to, correct him when he's done something wrong because they're afraid that they're going to do something wrong and that he's a black kid. So they only let black teachers discipline him and, put him in timeout because it's just something that people are so uncomfortable dealing with, their unconscious bias,
Mm-hmm.
So, and like I said, back when I was a kid, I experienced racism, but it was minuscule. Like, she's different, so I don't want to pick her on my softball team. She's
Yeah.
different, so she can't possibly sit with us. She's different. People
Right.
are afraid of differences, especially children. So when you add that layer of being afraid of different differences, you're already starting the unconscious bias,
Right.
and then when you act on it, you're becoming racist and acting on your own bias.
Right.
So
I also
there's
think
many layers.
I also think it works in the reverse sense too. Seeing, your example, your nephew is the only black child in his class. Some teachers might also be like, oh well, we have to put him in this activity, or we have to put him in this because we don't want to feel like we're neglecting him or treating him differently. But
Correct.
Inherently you are treating him differently because you're giving him another position that you wouldn't give the white child right next to him.
Right.
And I
Right.
think, and that might be out of the goodness of their heart, is like, I don't want to come across as prejudice or discriminatory, but let me take this extra opportunity. I don't think
That I'm not.
right, and I don't think we are dealing with that situation as much as the other, but I think it's important to bring up both sides. Like,
Right.
just treat people the way that they should be treated. I don't understand why it's so hard for people, but
It is what it is.
it is what it is. Well, I mean, that kind of goes into my next question is, what is, we kind of just talked about this really, but what is a passive form that you see pretty much every day from white people, in the sense of, it might not be a conscious thing, but passively they are using situations and causing racism through that?
The one that is so specific to me happened when I would date, and they would say, "Oh my God, you're so pretty for a black girl." Okay. Thank you. That's not a compliment.
Right.
That was extremely passive racism, or um, you don't talk like a black girl. You don't you're not the usual black girl because you don't do this or this. Um, it's so passive. It
Right.
is so passive, but it's downright racist. Like
Right.
you don't say things like that to people, or the assumption that Asians are better at math. Like
Right.
it's just acting on a stereotype and then blurting it out in the most ridiculous times and expecting me to think it is a compliment.
Right. I relate to that in the sense of when people come see me at work or they see me in any show that I'm
Right.
portraying a straight character, which for 99% of the time I've only played straight characters, but that's never listed in the character bio as this person is straight. It's just they fall in love with the woman that is their partner in the show or the scene or whatever it may be. But I get a lot is, oh my god, you acted so straight, or you're really good, you play straight really well. And it's like, I understand where the compliment is coming from, just as someone I'm sure is saying you're beautiful for a black woman. Like, it's coming from a place of you're beautiful, right? But why is it because you're a black woman? Why is it because I'm gay in my everyday life that I can't portray something else? Why is it that, so if you were a white woman with all of your same features, if everything about you was the same except for the color of your skin, like if we could like take a photo of you and just like
Uh-huh.
change a saturation or the hue or whatever, would you
Right.
still say that you're beautiful? You know what I mean?
That part.
Why is it because of this? And that really leads into my next topic that I wanted to talk about. What we're talking about right now is a term called microaggressions. It was termed in 1973, and it is all about like negative racial verbiage in a passive form to discriminate or downplay race, specifically race in this case, but
Mm-hmm.
really anything. Just like I was saying, like it could be sexuality, it could be well, you're a bad driver. Well, it's no wonder you're a woman, or
Right.
Asians are bad drivers, or what you said, Asians are great at math. Like, not these are blanket statements, but they're microaggressions. So they're meant to, at the heart of them, degrade someone based off of a characteristic of their being, whether that be race or sexuality or gender, religion. Um, I see that a lot in the gay community with, oh, well, you're gay, so you can't be a Christian. And it's like, well, these things don't match together. We don't need to link these things together. So I think that's really really profound that you said that, because I think a lot of people say these things. Another form of like a microaggression that is so, I think, more common is like when people say, "What are you?" You know what I mean? What are you? It's not. It's just what we've learned. When someone asks, "What are
Right.
you?" What do I immediately say? I say, "I'm white."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When I say, "What are you?" You're gonna say, I'm
I'm
black,
black.
I'm
Yeah.
African American. But in that verbiage, it's like, what are you? What nationality are you? What
Right.
you know the same with like, I was watching a TikTok the other day. It was like white people love to say, and or things white people say, and
Uh,
it's funny because these are all microaggressions and we find them funny, but at the heart of it, it's like it's not funny. Like when white
right.
people say, "What are you?" and they're like, "Oh, I'm a mutt." These terms are not, they're not even not politically correct. They're just not the right verbiage as to what you should say to another human being.
Right.
Um, so I urge everyone that's watching this to kind of take a step back, and we're going to do this, we're going to make mistakes, right? Like, I'm still probably going to say, "What are you?" Because when people say that to me, I'm like, "I'm white." And then people are like, "No, what are you? Like, what are you? Like, what nationality?" I'm like, "I'm German, I'm Polish, I'm all of
Right.
the above." But I was born in America. I have white skin, very white skin, especially for living in Florida. um, like, like we need to take a step back, and I urge people when they have a conversation and things like this, these conversations need to be in the back of your mind. So the next time I say that, if I were to see you and be like, what are you, I can be like, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to say it like that, I meant like, what nationality are you? And also, like, I've said that before in the sense of like, you're beautiful, and I don't want to assume that, you know, I've dated people that are Latino but they look, you know, black, or I've dated black guys that look Latino. So I don't want to assume one thing or another, but it's
Right.
learning the right way to talk to people. So with that, I think a big form of microaggressions happens with mitigation, and I wanted to ask you if you could explain what a little bit about that is.
Well, coming from our theater world, I want to address the microaggressions there, but I'm going to tread lightly.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I think it's
but
important to talk about.
so I want to address a note that I see is common. People are now coming out with their stories, and gosh, I'm so sorry.
You're fine.
That was my mom. They address issues. I lost you. There you are. So they people are talking about their experiences right now. And a lot of the experiences that other people have had, I find that I've also had, and it's good because we're not alone. But it's awful that it's just happening so much. The note of be more urban or be less urban, that is a huge microaggression. Basically, you are telling me to be less ghetto or be more ghetto.
Mm-hmm.
And it's extremely hurtful and offensive. And I know that people who get this note aren't trying to be, but it's there needs to be another term to address that, because it is it's extremely hurtful. Another microaggression is when you don't get the part and it goes to a person of color. You say, oh, they decided to go with diversity, rather than they might have been better. You know, they just might have been better and deserved the part. That is a microaggression, and that is extremely hurtful. That is implying that that person did not work as hard as you did, if not harder, to get what they wanted, you know, to get what they deserved. That is a huge one. Also, the notion of, I just lost my thought. The notion that all black people have the ability to take you to church. I can't run. Listen, I don't want to run. I don't want to run. I walk everywhere. I walk up the stairs. I walk down the stairs. I walk to my mailbox. I don't run, vocally or physically. Okay. Right. So you telling me
you do vocal runs? Don't you lie? I have heard them. You do vocal runs all the time, and I love it.
But dear, oh my God, I've had to work very, very hard to get the runs that I do have.
Right.
You know.
Right.
I've had to sit in my by my piano and try and make what would make sense.
Right.
Musically, because
I think
come naturally.
I think that also is like a lot of a stereotype is, and it's a good stereotype, is that all black people can sing. Right? Like that's what you're saying, like take you to church and stuff. Like,
right.
Just because you're black doesn't mean that you're inherently gifted with chords of gold, you know? Like,
right.
It's meant in a positive way, I think, you know?
Yes.
But it's not, that is such a microaggression, you know?
It is. And to assume, and to go furthermore than running, they want the big gospel belt. That's what they mean by that. It doesn't.
Right.
It doesn't just coincide with running. They want me to damage what I've got here, for the sake of what they want it to sound like. You know, and they only cast me based on my color. So they're like, she can. Let's assume that she can do it. Right. I mean, it's obvious she can. She's black. So take me to church, you know, and I've constantly heard it happen. That one in particular has never happened to me. But I've heard it happen to plenty of people, and it's inappropriate. It's very inappropriate.
I think someone posted actually one of our other coworkers posted on Facebook, kind of what you're talking about with casting and the way that, not even casting in general, but the mindset from other people. You know, I have admittedly thought, I don't think I've ever said it, but I've thought, oh well, they went in this direction for diversity.
Right.
And me thinking that, like, even saying that, they wanted a more diverse cast.
Mm-hmm.
It comes from a place of, like, that's great, you know, for me, like, you know me, you know my character, like, I would never say that in a derogatory way, but me saying it or even thinking it is derogatory. And
Right.
me saying diversity instead of they went with the black guy, to me, makes it okay to think that, or makes it okay to say that. Because I'm not saying, oh, well, they just went with the black guy.
Right.
I'm saying, oh, they wanted a more diverse cast.
Right.
It's the same thing. Like, it's the same thing. But until we have a moment, and this is kind of what this whole series and this chat is about, is like, until we start taking a step back from our own language and the things that we've learned, we're going to keep doing these things. Because I've been out here, I've been going to the protests, I've been doing all of that stuff, I've, been posting a lot, but none of that matters unless I change my own way of thinking.
Correct.
I can sit here and I can agree with something or disagree with something on Facebook and like it or dislike it, but until I actually take a step back. And, I was really nervous to start these conversations, and even talking to you on the phone before we hopped on here, I'm like, I don't want to say this. I don't want to be offensive. I don't want to use this term because what if it's not right? But ultimately, I have to take that away because I need to do that. I need to be offensive. I need to be, I need to say the things that I normally say in my everyday life so that you can correct me, so that you can teach me. Because if I filter everything right now, whether it's on, a recording that we're publishing or in our normal conversation, like, I need to hear it. I need you to say, Jake, this is what we're talking about. You know what I mean? And I think that's what a lot of people are afraid to do right now. And I urge people to really, like, I think if it's coming from a good place, I know if I said something, you would be like, Jake, I'm not judging you, but this is what we need to fix. And right now I think it's just a lot of this, or silence, period. And silence is violence, right? Silence is not speaking up. Silence is not learning. At our core, we have to learn to be better.
Being complicit. I've been saying, like, since the beginning of this, that racism is aggressive. It is ugly. It hurts. It kills. It abuses people. So why would we not want to attack it as aggressive as it attacks people?
Right.
Like, it doesn't deserve a neutral or, a passive response. Racism is aggressive.
Right.
Like I said, it hurts. It kills. It mentally and physically abuses people day in and day out, every single day. When I walk down the street with my white partner and my mixed kids, the looks that we get in Publix,
mm-hmm.
and people have been allowed to marry people of a different race for years now. Mm-hmm. So there is no reason for any of that. Like, I was once approached asking to prove if my son was my son by a police officer because he's a little fairer than I. They were like, yeah, well, we noticed that could you just prove? How do you want me to prove that my light-skinned son is my son?
Right.
Like, I've carried him for 9 months,
Also, what if he wasn't biological? What if you adopted him?
Correct. Why do you assume that because I'm a black woman, I wouldn't adopt a white child?
Right. And vice versa.
Vice versa. But I know people. I know white people who have black children, and they aren't addressed and confronted. Hey, can you prove that this is your child?
Right.
What?
Because then it just automatically, if you say this is my child, oh well, they are adopted. It's a way of thinking. But for you, and I've seen your children, and they look just like you. You know what I mean? Like, they are beautiful little boys, and they they look just like you, but just because their skin tone is a little bit more fair than yours, it that warrants proof to me that they're yours. It's
And they look like each other. Like
right.
they look like they look like twins. So even if one doesn't favor me exactly, the kids look just alike.
Right.
So it was asinine to me, but it was also very embarrassing that I needed to prove that in a parking lot.
Yeah.
That I needed to take time out of, my day to prove to somebody that my son was my son. And the proof was ridiculous. Like a picture? You want me to give you a picture that I
right.
took with my son yesterday? That doesn't make sense.
Right. It's not like you carry around their birth certificates with you.
Nor would a birth certificate do anything for a 1-year-old because
right.
the 1-year-old doesn't know their name.
Right.
So,
right.
I could tell my son his name is Jackson John Daly till the cows come home, but he's 1. He may not even answer you. You
right.
know, so he was 1 at the time. He's 3 now. But it's just people assume that I'm the nanny sometimes with my kids, because I couldn't possibly have kids that look like that, even though they look just like me.
Right.
But just a microaggression.
Yeah.
People, I don't know how to say it, making a conscious effort to date Black or another race so they can have mixed babies.
Yes.
So they can,
Also a term I think that goes along with that and is like, oh, you have jungle fever. I've gotten that a lot, and anyone that knows me is I've never dated a white guy, but it's not because I specifically chose to date people. I've not only dated Black guys, I've dated Hispanic guys and Asian people before, so very different races, but they all kind of look the same, and so people are like, oh, well, you have jungle fever, and I can't imagine what it's like as as a white person to feel that way. I can't even imagine the reverse. Someone that is Black or someone of color dating a white person, the looks that they get. I don't know that. Because I have privilege and people are going to say it in a joking way for me to be like, oh yeah, I got that. You know what I mean?
Right.
And unfortunately there are people, white people that are only date, like you just said, to have mixed babies. It's disgusting, and it is also someone that I was talking to is a lot of white guys have, in the straight community, I don't really know how, I haven't talked about it in the gay community, so I can't comment on this, but in the straight community there's a lot of white guys thinking like being with a Black woman is like a fantasy, like it's like I want to do it, I want to try it kind of thing.
Right.
And that behavior is also disgusting, and it's like, we're human beings. Right. I promise you all of our parts are the same, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I've gotten it. You have no idea. I've dated. I didn't date a lot, but I dated many different races. And by date, let me clarify that. We've gone out on a dinner. We've talked and tried to start the dialogue, and if we wanted to exclusively date,
right? Right.
So. Like you, many different races, Black, white, Hispanic and Asian. And a lot of them were extremely disappointing because it was just something to try. Like, right. I was a social experiment. Like,
right.
Well, I've always wanted to try to date a Black girl.
Right.
Okay, that's disrespectful, and I will never talk to you again.
And that also ties back into our very first question and what you were saying about, like, well, you're beautiful for a Black woman.
Right.
It all is, and this is the point that I want people to see, is like it all ties in. It's all encompassing.
Right.
What we're talking about right now is dating, and an idea of dating someone that you've never dated before because of the color of their skin. That in its very being is racist and very, very, prejudiced and discriminatory through that own, just the thought process of it. So people are still going to have thoughts. We can't change, like, I have horrible thoughts all the time. Like, I'm not even going to say them.
No,
It's not even about race. It's like, I have things, we're human beings. We all think something. We all, but having the conscious decision to say, stop thinking like that. It's if you're religious, it's good and evil. It's heaven and hell. We have, these temptations.
Mm-hmm.
And we will make mistakes. So I don't want it to seem like, oh, well, if I've said this, like, I can't change that. Or
Right.
we can't change our thoughts, but we can change our thought process. We can
Sure.
change the way that we filter our thoughts, and we can change the way that our thoughts are communicated with other people. So that's what I urge people to do. So with that, I want to ask one final question. What is some advice that you would give? Would you give specifically the white community, but really everyone that wants to either get into the Black Lives Matter movement or really just kind of be on the right side of history right now?
My advice is homework. Our education system failed us completely by sugarcoating American history in particular. And instead of giving us rainbows and dandelions, they should have been giving us the real. There are so many people besides Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and Rosa Parks who stood up for us in the Black community, who stood up for rights in general. Because what we need to get in our thought process is that Black rights came, and then women's rights came, and then out of that, the LGBTQ community's rights came. So the birth of this movement birthed a whole plethora of movements in its own, because wrong is wrong.
Right.
So once you see wrong on this side, you're going to start seeing wrong here and here and here and here and here. And everybody needs to come together and fight wrong.
Right.
It's not political. It's just wrong and right. So our education system failed us completely in not telling us the truth and not saying what needed to be said so that history doesn't repeat itself.
It was whitewashed, really. It was whitewashed.
It was whitewashed. Yes, it was, it made white Americans be the victim continually. And as a result of that, we're still dealing with the things that we should have been not dealing with, after Martin Luther King died, So it's research, homework, documentaries, look it up. Google is at our fingertips. YouTube is at our fingertips, that our people are telling you, things that they've experienced and they've researched. So we all have access to it. And so now there's no excuse, So I would suggest doing your homework and starting from the beginning. There's so much out there that you don't know, that your history books did not cover, that Black History Month just wasn't simply enough to cover, So yeah, that's it.
I appreciate you coming on this and having this conversation with me. I think we talked about some really, really important things that people need to hear right now. And I'm just so grateful for you. You have always been, before all of this kind of started getting very public, and after, before George Floyd died, you have always stuck up for the right thing, whether that be race or gender or, whatever it may be. You are just an amazing light, and I urge you to keep shining your light on as many people as you can, because to me, you are just a wonderful, wonderful human being. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on and talking.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Please stay safe, and we'll talk again soon, all right?
Yes. Oh, thank you so much, Dave.
Thank you so much, Jay, for sitting down with me and having the conversation. I think we talked about a lot of really great things. If all of you want to stay in touch with me, please look at my social media that I listed in the description below. Ask me questions, leave comments in the comment section so that I can ask these and promote these with other people that I sit down with in the future. Also, please make sure to subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss any videos coming up. So, with that being said, I hope all of you are remaining safe. Please remember to be kind, And always remember, there is nothing to prove, only something to share. I'll see you guys in the next one.